Everybody, welcome back to Ask Truth Apologetics. I am here today to discuss with you some more common objections that are brought up with Psalm 22. Um, this is a messianic prophecy according to most Christians, but a lot of Jewish people and Muslims tend to deny that it has anything to do with Jesus. I made a video that I will post a link to in the description box about that a few weeks ago. So if you guys haven't seen that, go ahead and check it out. That's where you're going to get most of my argument for why Psalm 22 is about Jesus. But today we're going to bring up a major point of contention that Jewish people and also Muslims tend to use as their common objections for why Jesus is not the Messiah. And it comes down to actually just one word. So I had to learn a little bit of Hebrew to bring you guys this video, but I think it's really, really important that we take a look at it as objectively as possible so that we can follow the truth. And that's what this channel is about, is asking about truth and seeking truth and finding truth. So the point in contention is a particular line where it says, like a lion, or they dug or pierced my hands and my feet. So a lot of Jewish people and Muslims will say that that is a mistranslation of the Hebrew word, which the Masoretic text, which I'll talk to you guys about, says that that is like a lion, but the more ancient manuscripts say otherwise, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But before we get into that any further, guys, I want to talk to you about why Psalm 22 is so important. And I know we covered that in the other video, but I think it's important we reiterate this. And it's very important because of the words that Jesus said while he was hanging on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? So for someone who doesn't quite understand why he would be saying that, right, they're going to be thinking, oh, well, if he's God, why is he going to be saying, God, why have you forsaken me? That seems like a very strange thing. Or maybe he's having a moment of weakness or something like that. So people will use that as an argument against the Christian position that Jesus Christ was the Son of God and the Messiah. So when he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's actually quoting the first line in the Psalm 22. So that's kind of a lot like if I were to say, Humpty Dumpty. What does that mean when I say Humpty Dumpty? Well, it typically means that something has been broken beyond repair. Why would you know that? Well, it's because Humpty Dumpty is a very common nursery rhyme, right? Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So that is, when I just say Humpty Dumpty, automatically your mind thinks, if you know that nursery rhyme, your mind thinks like, oh, something is broken beyond repair. The same thing happens a lot of time with like song lyrics or poems, or in this case, Psalm 22, when Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me? You don't think about the beginning of the song, you think about what the ending of the song means, right? And so in my last video we went through the conclusion of that. But that leads us into one of the most critical and key points of the psalm. Now, I don't think you need to have my hands and my feet are pierced to know that it's about Jesus, but it does strengthen the case a little bit, and I just want to look into that a little bit further to see, what is it? Is it like a lion, my hands and my feet, or is it they pierced or dug my hands and my feet? So we're going to look into the Hebrew a little bit today. So on the left side of your screen, you're going to see like a lion. In Hebrew, it is ka'ari. So Hebrew goes from right to left, so it's the opposite of the English language. So what you're going to see is a backwards C, an N or X looking symbol, something that resembles a 7, and then the last thing you'll see is something that looks like an apostrophe. So that word's translated is like a lion, ka'ari. Okay, now on the right side of your screen, you're going to see something that looks almost identical to it. So you're going to see your backwards C, your NX looking thing, your 7, and then instead of that apostrophe there, you're going to see kind of a smaller looking type of 7. And so when that word is used, that is called ka'aru. So that means to dig or to pierce. Um, so we're going to keep that in mind as we continue to move forward into the presentation. But before we get into that, let's talk about Masoretic texts. I keep using this word Masoretic. Basically, that just means that those are the Jewish um, scribes and scholars that got together and determined what their official scripture was going to be. And that project was completed by approximately 1000 AD. There's actually not any or very, very few amounts of manuscripts between um, the time of, actually, period, the end of time. There's really hardly anything that the Jewish people kept with them to create this Masoretic text. So a lot of this was just oral tradition and written tradition that we don't even have proof of. And that was completed at a very late date, because if you think about the dating and the writing of the Old Testament, we're talking about 1500 years BC, before Christ. And it's kind of scary that there's not that much manuscript evidence to show that there's actually been an Old Testament, is what we call it. But despite that, right, we've had quite a few findings, archaeological finds, within the past couple hundred years, really 100 years, that have uncovered a lot of ancient manuscripts, Hebrew texts, Greek texts, all that kind of stuff, to where we can compare what we've uncovered there to what the traditions, the Masoretic traditions have. So when we compare those things, what we find out is that they're largely accurate compared to the ancient manuscripts, right? So the Masoretic text is pretty reliable. It's very reliable. In fact, this might be the most reliable manuscript source that we have when it comes to the Torah and the Tanakh, so basically our Bible's Old Testament. Now, however, the Masoretic text, like I said, was completed in 1000 AD. There are manuscript traditions that are not in Hebrew that predate the Masoretic text, and so we can compare what kind of translations they had, like with the Septuagint, which is a translation in the Greek and is called Septuagint because it's 70 sept. And the Septuagint was, legend has it that 70 scribes went into a room and translated their Old Testament from the Hebrew into the Greek language, and when they all came out, they all had literally the exact same words in it. So the Septuagint is supposedly a very accurate translation of the original Hebrew language. The New Testament makes quite a bit of references to the Old Testament, and now that we've uncovered quite a bit of archaeological evidence, the Dead Sea Scrolls and other finds like the Nag Hammadi Library and things of that nature, we can actually find ancient Hebrew, Septuagint, and other types of writings. We've uncovered those things in order to determine what is the most accurate rendering of the text. So here's really what we're going to start to come down to. The Christian text, the Septuagint, and actually a few Masoretic variants say, pierced my hands and my feet. That's the way that they have translated it. And like I said, even a few Masoretic texts do. But the vast majority of Masoretic texts translate it as ka'ari, right, which is like a lion, whereas the Septuagint would have assumed that the Hebrew was ka'aru, which means to have pierced. So just real quick, this is what the Septuagint says. So if you look up your Greek Septuagint, it says, "For many dogs have compassed me, the assembly of wicked doers has bested me. Round they pierced my hands and my feet." So I've highlighted and read for you guys what the Septuagint says in that particular verse. There's a Syriac version that is an early dating as well. And it says, very similarly, because dogs surround me and the assembly of evil have surrounded me, they have pierced my hands and my feet. So the Syriac text agrees with the Septuagint, which also agrees with the Christian scriptures. However, the Masoretic text, as you can see, says, "For dogs encircle me, an evil congregation has surrounded me, and like a lion, my hands and my feet." And we'll get to that in a little bit, and discuss what the heck that actually means. Like a lion, my hands and my feet. I'm going to play a video for you guys here in just a second. And because again, I'm not a Hebrew scholar, whereas the person discussing this is. So there are 5 variants in the Hebrew, at least what they cited here in this video, where the manuscripts reads ke'aru, which means to pierce or dig. Now, kariya, which means pierce or dig. Now, like I said, the vast majority of the Masoretic texts have another variant closer to like a lion, but it's actually interesting that even still there is some Masoretic tradition that maintains that. So I'm going to play a video for you guys. Hopefully this pulls up quickly. It's going to start at 15:45, so let's go ahead and get that thing rolling. And you can hear what Dr. Michael Brown has to say about this. Hopefully we don't have to play through too many
don't overpay for plane tickets. WikiBuy can save you money. It's a browser extension.
All right, so here is what he has to say. It's going to be at 17:45. No, 15:45. And it'll play through 17.
To explain this to you. But what you have here is a series of numbers. And what it's telling you is, okay, in this particular manuscript, which scholars number as thus and such, number 4, 38, or 40, etc., that the main Masoretic text means one thing, but you have X number of manuscripts that read something different. So, for example, instead of ka'ari, like a lion, you have one manuscript, number 245, that reads ka'aryeh. These are Masoretic manuscripts, Masoretic Hebrew texts, late medieval and after, okay? So it's a more full spelling of lion, ka'aryeh, instead of ka'ari. But you have the text, and I underlined it, ka'aru, kaf, aleph, resh, vav, which Rabbi Singer said does not exist in a single Masoretic text, Masoretic Bible, anywhere in the world. False, 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 false. How many times false? Well, here you have it. Manuscript number 39, 267, 270, 277, and then 288 and 660, and then some other variations. Then you have some other marginal ones. So overall, you have it tested about 8 different times. You say, well, it's just 8. Hey, when someone says none exist, when someone says there's not a manuscript on the planet where this exists, and here, and any scholar knows the Kennecott collection, okay? Durosian just supplemented it with errors and with variations in the vowels as well. But any Hebrew scholar, biblical scholar, is familiar with this compilation. It is just a list of the Masoretic manuscripts, Masoretic Hebrew manuscripts. When Rabbi Singer says, never occurs, 0, no manuscripts, no Hebrew Bible, no, and he's very dramatic about it. Well, you got at least 8 times. And then 4 or 5 times you have karu. So this is a legitimate variant in these Masoretic manuscripts, karu or karu. Okay, so as I said, I'm kind of shocked to see these things, and I want to play one more clip from Rabbi Singer. But
okay, guys, so that was a clip there, real quick. I just wanted to have you guys take a look and see what an actual Hebrew scholar says about it, and I'll actually post a link to this particular video because you'll hear he said something about Rabbi Tovia Singer. He is one of the top, if not the top, anti-missionaries against Jewish people converting to Christianity or becoming what's known as a Messianic Jew. So you can take a look at both of those videos. I'll leave that in the description box so you can see for yourself. But that's just kind of proof positive that there is some actual Masoretic variations that do have that word ka'aru in it. All right, so here's kind of the kicker, and actually I'll talk about this a little bit more in a couple of the next slides coming up. But the Dead Sea Scrolls, or the Nakal Chever text, says, "For dogs encircled me, an evil congregation has surrounded me, and they dug my hands and my feet." So what you'll see, guys, is in that particular variation of it, from a manuscript that was uncovered that was, I think, around 1940 something, was uncovered untouched, right? That's how they have it translated. So that's very interesting, something to pay attention to. So my question is, anytime I see information like this, is this just like an honest mistake? Or do we have motives to lie? Because each of us, let's be honest, we all have bias, and we have a tendency to lean towards a certain understanding, and particularly when it comes to religion and politics and things that we all deem to be of the utmost importance. None of us really want to be wrong, and a lot of us want to obviously remain right. So let's just be honest. So the Masoretes, or the Jewish people, they don't want Jesus to be the Messiah. Christians, obviously, they want Psalm 22. They don't want it to not be about Jesus. We want it to keep it as something that is for Jesus. So can I trust the Jewish people to have not made any adjustments to it? Well, they would have a motive to lie, right? So that's not to say that they did lie or didn't lie, perhaps, but there is a motive there for them to do it. Now, that's the same thing is true for Christians, right? Well, the Christians, would they have a motive to change the text from ka'ari to ka'ara, right? It's not that hard to, ka'ari to ka'aru. It's not that hard to take that little apostrophe and lengthen it down a little bit and say, look, see, it's what the original Hebrew text said. So I'm going to try to keep my own, obviously, Christian bias out of it, and I want to take a look at, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, so to speak, right? So what texts didn't know about Jesus, right? So I really want to start looking at texts that predate Jesus, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls that we found and the Septuagint. So here is the point of contention. This is a digitally enhanced version of the manuscript that has been found that contains the Psalm 22 verse ka'ari or ka'aru, depending upon how you translate it. So there in that green box, guys, you can see that kind of C, that NX looking thing, the number 7, and then the apostrophe or the tiny 7, right? So that's where we're going to start to run into issues. So I'm just going to give you guys a real quick comparison. Sorry about the pixelation of that picture down at the bottom, but hopefully you guys can see what we're talking about, right? So like a lion, which is ka'ari, the first letter, the C there on the right side, that matches. The NX looking thing, that is pretty daggone close, that matches. That 7 looks like a 7. And then the apostrophe, well, that could look like an apostrophe if the person who's writing it, just made it a little bit longer. Maybe that's it. Or, excuse me, we can compare that to the ka'aru, right? So the spelling ka'aru, which is pierce or dig, that has obviously the same C-looking thing, the NX-looking thing, the 7-looking thing, and then that little short-looking 7. That, to me, and you guys are looking at this for yourself, right? That we live in an age where there's so much fake news that but we have to be skeptical, right? And instead of me going to an expert and fully relying on them, I want to rely on them to show me what they're talking about. And then I want to examine it for myself, right? Like, I want the news. I want to not just hear what the reporter says happened. I want to be able to witness it myself to see if that's what I think actually happened using my own reason and intellect and mind. So, in my opinion, this looks almost identical. This looks better than, I should go back here to the screen. This looks better than like a lion, right? So if you guys can see my mouse, that does not look like that, whereas if we go here, this looks exactly like this. All right, so moving on, and I'm going to kind of just bring up, like, let's give the benefit of the doubt to the Masoretic text, which hopefully you're seeing by now is if we're going to be looking at that one particular manuscript that's not been doctored by anyone, right? It was buried in a cave for thousands of years, predating Jesus and predating the Masoretic text. That kind of says and agrees with the Septuagint, the Christian understanding of it, and the Syriac understanding of it. So, but regardless, let's say that that's for some reason that, like a lion, my hands and my feet is the correct interpretation. I'm going to read over here on the right-hand side of your screen a quick thing, because I looked up at the Jewish objections to this, and I want to try to be as fair as possible to all positions. And so this was the explanation that I got, which is very similar to a lot of the other explanations I got from many of the other websites, including Rabbi Tovia Singer's. So I'll just read it for you guys. The correct interpretation of the verse must be based on the elliptical style of this particular psalm. The text should read, in effect, like a lion. And you'll see here in brackets, by the way, they are gnawing at my hands and my feet. Ellipsis, the omission of the word, is an apt rhetoric device for composition in which suffering and agony are described. So what I'm hearing, actually I'll just keep reading. A person in agony does not usually express his feelings in complete round sentences, such a person is capable of exclaiming only the most critical words, like, oh, I don't know, my God, why have you forsaken me? Interesting. Of his thoughts and feelings, in this case, like a lion, ... my hands and my feet. So that is one of the reasons that this particular website was giving for why that sentence actually doesn't make sense, because apparently the psalmist writing this 1,000 years prior to Jesus' existence, they were apparently writing this in a state of agony, so they didn't want to, they didn't have the ability to finish their sentence, I guess, or to complete the sentence. To me, that makes no sense. The sentence itself makes no sense. The explanation, I really just, I don't buy it. If this was the recording of someone's words when they were being attacked, like, I would understand that. But this psalm was written by someone who sat down and composed it. They had the ability to poetically, which they did in the rest of the psalm, explain what's going on. So here's what's interesting. So they end up adding assumed verbs or words to say, what does this lion have to do with my hands and my feet? So what is it doing? Or is it gnawing at my hands and my feet, or is it pinned down? There's a lot of different questions that we have for what this lion is doing if we're going to assume that the Masoretic text, the Ka'ari, is like a lion, because that actually ends up begging a couple of questions. So we'll move on to this, and we'll pay attention to what it is that they're saying. So they pierced my hands and my feet, says the Septuagint, the Christian Bible, the Peshitta, and some Masoretic texts, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, specifically the Nachal Chever. So here we go. This is what the majority of the Masoretic texts say. They do say like a lion. Again, they're in disagreement with the Septuagint Christian Bible, Peshitta, and some other Masoretic text and the Dead Sea Scroll. But like a lion, my hands and my feet is what it literally says. Or like a lion, they are at, which are words added, by the way. These are added words. Or they gnaw, just seems like you can just kind of place in anything you want. They paw, or they purr at my hands and my feet. I don't really know. They growl at my hands and my feet, and they pin down. So those are some of the options that I saw from the Jewish sources on what that sentence actually means. But it's interesting, right? Because they have to assume that they get to make that little apostrophe go all the way down, but then that ends up kind of ruining the sentence, and then they have to start to assume that there's 2 or 3 added words to the text to make it even make sense. Or they can just say it was ka'aru, which means pierced or dig or dug. But anyway, so giving the benefit of the doubt, even if it means like a lion at my hands and my feet, or my hands and my feet. Does that take away from the psalm describing the crucifixion scene of Christ? I don't think so. I mean, take a look. By the way, what does a lion do? What would a lion be doing in that particular situation? Like I said, it's not purring. It's probably not like, rubbing up on you like your house cat's going to do. It's attacking you. So this is, a couple photos of what lions are capable of. If this lion on the left was at your hands and your feet, would you feel comfortable? No. If this lion's attacking you like that, look at those paws, man. Look at that person holding it. Like, those things are gigantic. So like a lion at my hands and my feet. Well, lions dig and claw and bite and pierce, and they destroy their flesh of their victims, which looks a whole lot like kind of the scene of Christ, what he went through to get up to the cross. Okay, so let's take a look at the big picture here, guys. I'm going to play a real quick preschool game with you, right? Do you guys remember this game? Which one of these is different from the others? Okay, so we have to take the verse into context of the chapter of Psalm 22, right? So first of all, the Septuagint, the Christian text, the Syriac versions, and the Dead Sea Scrolls all agree that it is pierce, or dig, right? They're all digging, piercing, those types of things. So which one is different? Well, the Masoretic text is actually different. So for my money, I'm just going to go, okay, well, it's probably to pierce or to dig. Context is king as well. So when you put this thing into the context of Psalm 22, you're gonna understand that that's kind of what's happening. There's a crucifixion scene happening, and when you read, and again, it's in the links in the description. I don't have to get into Psalm 22 as much, but when you read it, it leaves little doubt that whatever is said to have happened to Jesus is being described by Psalm 22. Okay, so even if, like I said, guys, it still describes Jesus' crucifixion. That's pretty much all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Please like, subscribe if this is something that you're interested in. Leave some comments down below if you have any questions, or you'd like to bring up some objections that I may have not had the opportunity to cover. And I look forward to looking into this with you, right? Not for you. I want to do it with you. So if there's something that you disagree with or you agree with, please affirm or don't affirm. I'll be really interested to see what you guys have to say. So once again, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and God bless.